Okay, so now it's the time to see Azure Synapse SQL, in which we are going to focus on dedicated SQL Server first. You can see right now I'm still with the same Synapse workspace which I have created in the previous video. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a new dedicated SQL pool first. If you have a question, what is this dedicated SQL pool? Well, just hang on. I'm going to explain that thing. But before I do that thing, I just want you to create one new dedicated SQL pool with me so that we can execute some queries inside that. And then we can see that how this data warehousing engine is actually working. Let me click on new dedicated SQL pool. I'm going to provide some meaningful name. Let's say I'm going to specify that name of this pool is my SQL D pool, dedicated pool with some number like 22, something like that. It's showing me one more configurational option here, which is like performance level. Now actually, performance level of this dedicated SQL pool is very important configuration, because based on this, you will be able to understand what kind of computational power is going to be associated with this dedicated pool. As of now, I'm choosing the minimum computational power, which is DW100C. Remember, the range is starting from 100C to 30,000C actually. This particular one is actually performance level, which is very important to understand. So we have one link available on the portal, which I want to keep it open. This particular link I'll go through very soon, and then I'll show you that what this table is actually trying to tell you about the data warehouse units. But yes, right now I'm selecting 100 DWC, which is data warehouse units. So that's perfectly fine. It's showing me the cost per hour for this dedicated SQL pool is going to be 108 Indian rupees, which is fine for me right now. I'm going to start the deployment of this thing without any other configurational changes. So I'm just going to click on review and create. And then I'm going to click on create. This dedicated SQL pool is going to take some time. But while this is deploying actually, let's understand what is this actually, and let's try to focus on the conceptual part of this. So Azure Synapse SQL is actually distributed query system that enables you to implement data warehousing and data virtualization scenarios using your standard T-SQL experience familiar to data engineers. Now this is a very important line. And this is telling you that whenever you're going to execute any SQL queries inside this, these are going to be a standard transactional SQL queries only. But these queries are going to be meant for data warehousing and data virtualization. That's why whenever you're going to execute this query, it is going to be distributed query system. It means it is going to be utilizing that query in the distributed manner. So your tables are going to have distributions, and your each query is going to be executing with some distributed compute associated with that. Synapse SQL offer both serverless and dedicated resource models. That's what we know. That's the reason we have created dedicated SQL pool right now. And then later on, we are going to see serverless SQL pool also. If you are looking for a predictable performance and cost, then you have to create a dedicated SQL pool to reserve your processing power for data sources in SQL tables. And that's what we have done right now. Suppose you have some unplanned or ad hoc workload kind of requirement, and then you don't know what kind of compute you need for that. Then you can always use the always available SQL server, which is serverless actually. So you can use the serverless SQL pool endpoint at that time, which is already available in your Synapse. Now, before we proceed with this, we need to understand something which is known as Synapse SQL architecture. And this leverage a scale-out architecture to distribute computational processing of data across multiple nodes. This architecture is having multiple nodes inside that, where each node is nothing but some kind of a computer with a SQL server installed inside that. If I be very specific, then I'll tell you that each node is nothing but a virtual machine which is going to have SQL server installed inside this. Compute is separate from storage. That's what is independently scalable actually. And Synapse SQL, which is using this node-based architecture, is actually allowing you to associate with two kind of nodes. The one is known as control node, and the other one is known as compute nodes. In every architecture of Synapse SQL, you are going to have only one control node, which is actually going to take your queries, which will be in the T-SQL queries, which will be taken care by control node. So it's going to take your queries either from application or user, and then it's going to try to execute those queries. But then this is a control node which is going to take the query. It's not going to execute by itself. Control node is going to distribute this particular query using the distributed query engine, and then this is going to be executed parallelly in all the compute nodes which are available. And in this architecture, you are always going to have one control node and multiple compute nodes. Hey guys, sorry for interruption. My name is Maruti, and I'm here to make a very important announcement. I hope you are liking our videos and you're doing a continuous learning with us on an Azure Cloud and AI related topics. If you are enjoying this thing, I'm going to announce skilltech.club, which is our upcoming website, which is going to be launched very soon. We are here to tell you one thing, that everyone who is a subscriber of this particular channel will get Azure Cloud and Azure AI related certification courses free of cost in skilltech.club. So you will be a part of the skilltech.club kind of a membership automatically free of cost. And everyone who's a subscriber of this particular channel will get those benefits which are available in that. So what are you waiting for? I request you to please subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends and families if they are also interested in Azure Cloud and AI learning. That's it from my side. Now you can carry on with your learning. Thank you. If I try to focus on the data warehousing architecture with dedicated SQL pool, then it's going to look like this. You can see on this diagram that we have one dedicated SQL pool, and inside this dedicated SQL pool, we have something which is massive parallel processing engine, which is formerly known as MPP engine, in which we have one control node and multiple compute nodes. As I said, control node and compute node both are computers like a virtual machines with dedicated SQL server installed inside that. Control node will take your queries from either application and users, and then it's going to distribute that to available multiple compute nodes. Multiple compute nodes are going to have dedicated SQL server with that, so it's going to execute the query in a distributed way. And every time when you want to execute any query, it will be divided into parts, and then each part will be executed by an independent compute node. That's how the query execution is going to be parallel. If you ask me what is the range of this compute node, how many compute node can be there? In every dedicated SQL pool, one control node and either 1 to 60, the range of the compute nodes are going to be minimum one compute node is going to be there, or maximum 60 compute node can be there, and that is what the architectural structure is all about. Now whenever we are going to execute this query and then how many compute nodes are going to be there, that is something which is based on my data warehousing unit. As you know, we have selected DW100C. If I go to that web page which I kept open from Microsoft documentation, this is showing me that if you have DW100C, then this is going to have only one compute node. It means this is a bare minimum configuration of this, which is going to have one control node and one compute node only. Suppose if I want parallel processing and more distributions associated with that, then I can go with the higher DWC, which can go up to maximum, which is DW30000C, in which we have 60 compute nodes. It means this is a maximum capacity of this data warehouse, one control node and 60 compute nodes will be there in which the queries are going to be distributed. When you're going to use these distributions, actually every query is going to be distributed based on something which is known as distributions. Now if you ask me what is a distribution actually, well, that is also another important concept which you, in order to understand this particular structure. So let's say if I want to focus on distributions, then the definition says that a distribution is a basic unit of storage and processing for parallel queries that runs on a distributed data. When dedicated SQL pool runs a query, the work is divided into 60 smaller queries that are going to execute parallelly. Each of the 60 smaller queries are going to run on one of the data distributions. Each compute node manage one or more of 60 distributions associated with that. It means now this brings me to one particular conclusion, that every time if I have only one compute node, then all the 60 distributions are going to be executed in that particular compute node only. Same way, if I have two compute nodes, then it's going to divide them into 50-50. So 30 distributions will be executed in one compute node and another 30 will be distributed in another one. Same way, if I go to 10 different compute nodes where 10 different parallel processing are going to happen, then each compute node is going to have 6 distributions associated with that, and total will be always 60. 60 distributions are there. Maximum capacity of the compute nodes are also going to be 60. So if I go to the maximum capacity, every compute node will have one distribution, and that's going to be 60 times capable, more performance than a normal SQL server which you can get. This is which is an architecture of the Synapse SQL dedicated pool, and how it is working and how it's improving performance, that totally depends on how many compute nodes you have selected and then what kind of distributions you have in your table. We have distributions like round robin, hash, and replicate table kind of things which we can decide and then we can create in our table, and then after that, using these distributions, we will be able to execute our queries parallelly. As of now, if I go back to my dedicated SQL pool, it's still showing me in progress. If I wait for a few moments, it will be done. And then if this deployment is done, then I'm going to start executing queries inside that. That's what we are going to see in the next video. Stay tuned.